finished the Callisto protocol last night, and it's a little bit awkward to try and get gameplay footage of it. So I went into New Game Plus mode and got up to the point where you get introduced to your first actual fight, so I can showcase the combat mechanics and talk about them a little bit. So you get your first melee weapon, nice crowbar, and you get to meet this big guy. So it's basically Punch Out, because when you're fighting individual enemies, you can see them attacking, and you can hold down left or right on the stick to dodge. And one of the gameplay tutorials is the fact that you always have to dodge in different directions. So like if someone attacks you and you have to dodge to your left, you always have to dodge to your right afterwards. You'll never dodge left twice in a row. And because of this, it's almost too easy to avoid taking any damage from a single enemy. I mean, for the purpose of this review, I'm playing on easy to make sure I don't just die while talking to this guy, but it's really easy to dodge at enemies' attacks. Like, they're all heavily telegraphed, you've got a pretty healthy dodge window. It's possible that the window's a lot narrower on the highest difficulty, which I didn't bother jumping into, but it's not particularly challenging for most of the game because of that. So the game has to do things to make it more challenging once you've got the hang of how to, just hold left or right to dodge and press triangle to, QTE. But enemies get the ability to just simply regenerate all of their health, and you can even like hit off their limbs with your guns, or if you hit them with melee attacks, so they can just grow those back. But it's really annoying because they have this mechanic called tentacles, where like the center of their body will sprout a little massive writhing tentacles, and then you can shoot it to stop them from mutating. And there were a bunch of times where I thought I had hit their tentacles, like shot them, and the enemy would just mutate anyway and get all their health back. But the other thing they do is like they throw more than one enemy at once, and the problem there is that the second that they throw more than one enemy at once at you, it immediately devolves into an absolute cluster because you can't really dodge attacks from more than one enemy at once. So you gotta try and do a little bit of crowd control. Oh, and you also don't get anything from dead bodies unless you hit them again and stomp them. So no, that's fun. So combat just doesn't feel great throughout. Like, it's quite visceral when you start out, when you're just getting into little one-on-ones and you're dodging attacks and you're feeling good, and then it just gradually gets worse over time. Like, there's a weapon upgrade tree that kind of feels mandatory as opposed to making you more powerful, because enemies just get more health as you go. So if you don't keep up with your damage upgrades, you end up using more resources to kill the same enemies and find yourself in a harder spot. So you don't feel like you're getting stronger for using your credits to upgrade your gear. And some of the upgrades really feel very ancillary or silly, or just even poorly worded. Like there's an upgrade for one of the guns later. It's like, oh yeah, you get explosive rounds now, but it doesn't bother to tell you that it's only when you press R1 and not R2 because you have an alt fire now. Some of the guns have alt fires and it tells you about them. Some of the guns it doesn't. So it was kind of annoying to have spent like a large chunk of credits on an upgrade that I ended up not using because it's an alt fire. It uses 5 times the ammo. It's mostly pretty. The game looks okay. Like it's using Unreal Engine, so it looks nice. Fire looks terrible. Like I think if I open these doors and skip past the cutscene where we free Elias, this is all within the first half an hour of the game, so don't worry too much about spoilers. Fire looks terrible, just awful. Thankfully, you don't get a flamethrower or anything like that, because otherwise, it just make it look even worse. But yeah, just the fire effect. It's like a 2D effect that's just running at a different frame rate from the game. It just looks weird and bad. The story is awful. Like it is incredibly obvious. There's like you can't see me doing the air quotes here, but there are twists in the tale that are immediately obvious to anyone who plays the game for like 3 to 4 minutes. That are very ham-fisted. There's actually one incredibly cool storyline mechanic that they've got in here that they could use to make a really interesting and good horror game, and they completely squander it. But hey, maybe the second one will be better. Crucially, it's okay. It's just okay. Like, it feels like the very definition of like a 6 out of 10 kind of game. Like, it's playable, it works, I didn't experience any too major bugs or glitches, but there's a lot of bad texture popping and a lot of bad level of detail popping where things are just appearing out of the ground and appearing on walls in front of you. Um, there's some really annoying enemies that can just turn invisible. It's not like they have like a little predator, go around them so you can see them or whatever. No, they're just invisible. Um, so yeah, combat's okay and serviceable. The story's actively bad. Like the voice acting is good, and what the actors are given to act is good. Like they do an okay job with the material they've got. It's just that the script is pretty bad. Um, Oh, and they also have a thing that combines kinesis and stasis, where you can kind of like reach out your hand and grab enemies, which of course I don't have at this point in the game because it's New Game Plus. And that feels bad too because you can kind of chuck them around the place, and it's not very effective or useful at all unless you're in one of the specific places where it's like, here's a bunch of spikes on the walls where you can throw enemies into them, so you can actually use the ability for something. Because otherwise, it's pretty useless. So yeah, it's just okay. Like if you get the opportunity to play this through PS Plus or Game Pass, then do it that way, and you'll have an okay 9 to 10 hours like I did. But like I can't really recommend spending too much money on it. Like I got it for 12 quids. It's going to trade back in for about a fiver, so that feels like a bit as much money as I'd want to pay for it really. Thanks for watching.